The final stretch of the Appalachian Trail, Mount Katahdin, loomed in the distance like a distant promise, an unyielding giant rising from the dense forest of Maine. Nathan had been walking for months, each step more grueling than the last, but now, as the final miles unfolded before him, he felt both numb and alive. His body was more machine than man now. His feet were calloused, his legs solid as oak, his mind sharp with the discipline of survival. But inside, his heart beat differently, no longer chasing the trail or the summit, but chasing something else entirely. He'd been traveling alone for so long that the thought of other hikers no longer felt familiar. The conversations he once had with strangers on the trail had dwindled. There were no more small talk or camaraderie. There was only the mountain ahead and the quiet that sat with him, thick like a fog. As he began the climb toward Katahdin's summit, the air thinned. Every breath felt as if he were inhaling glass, sharp and heavy. The trail grew steeper, rockier, the forest thinning as he ascended into open scree fields. Each step was a challenge. His body, a sack of tired muscle and bone, struggled to keep up with the relentless terrain. The path narrowed. There were no more switchbacks, no more gently sloping climbs. Just sheer rock faces that forced him to dig his fingers into the granite, pull himself upward, one motion after another, until his forearms burned with lactic acid. He knew that each step could be his last. The summit felt like a far-off memory, an unreachable goal that whispered faintly but refused to come closer. The sun was starting to sink as he crested the last ridge, the sky above bruising into deep shades of purple and pink. A sudden gust of wind hit him like a slap, sending a chill straight through his jacket. The clouds, dark and threatening, seemed to hover closer to the peaks, an omen or perhaps just nature's warning of its own power. He paused, standing at the edge of the precipice. His fingers dug into the rock, and for the first time in months, his chest tightened with a rush of emotion. Fear, doubt, exhaustion, all swirling together in one brief, intense moment. His eyes stung from the wind, but there was no turning back. The mountain was in front of him. There was only one way to go. The final scramble was brutal. He gripped rocks, pulling himself up with everything he had left, heart pounding in his ears, vision fading, his muscles screaming in protest. For a moment, it felt as if the mountain itself was trying to push him back, as though it could sense his fatigue, his vulnerability. But then something shifted. He reached the summit. Slowly, quietly. It wasn't an explosion of triumph. It wasn't a victory dance. It wasn't the moment of glory he had once envisioned, with people cheering or a flag planted in the ground. There was only silence. The wind howled around him, but he didn't move. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. He wasn't sure what had brought him here. Grit, stubbornness, or the quiet understanding that he simply had to press on. Standing at the top, he didn't feel like a conqueror. He didn't feel invincible. He felt small but not in a negative way. He felt like part of something larger than himself. The mountains, the trees, the clouds, they were timeless. They had been here long before he arrived, and they would be here long after he left. His moment in this vast, sweeping wilderness wasn't the end of a battle, but rather a peaceful acknowledgement that he had made it through. Nathan sat on a boulder at the summit, breathing in the cool, crisp air, the setting sun casting long shadows across the land. His fingers brushed against the journal that had been with him all along. It was worn and frayed, its pages thick with the ink of his thoughts, some hopeful, some uncertain, some filled with grief. It had seen him through every blizzard, every blister, every battle against himself. And now it had reached its final chapter. In his journal, he wrote one last entry, slower now, each word carefully chosen.
I thought I was walking to forget. I thought I was walking to outrun the ghosts. But what I've learned is this: you never outrun them. You walk with them. And when you stop running, you find peace in the silence.
The night began to fall as he sat on that rock, watching the last slivers of sunlight slip behind the ridges. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like a man who had just crossed the finish line of a race. There was only the stillness of the moment, The realization that the end of this journey had never truly been about the destination, but about the space he'd created within himself to heal. As darkness settled over the summit, Nathan stood up, took one last look at the vast expanse of the world beneath him, and began his descent. Back down the mountain, back into the world. The trail would continue to wind its way through the forest, but for now, his journey was complete. He wasn't searching for anything anymore. He had pressed on, and in doing so, he had found exactly what he needed. Rhea woke up at 6. Not because she had anywhere to be, but because the routine was the last thing she still owned. The alarm rang with military precision, a cold, emotionless beep. She didn't snooze it. She never snoozed it. The stillness after it stopped was almost more jarring than the sound itself. She sat on the edge of the bed for a full minute before standing. Her feet touched the cold tiles with the kind of hesitation people reserve for ledges. She made the bed with mechanical precision. Straightened pillows. Flattened wrinkles. Pulled corners tight like she was sealing a wound. In the kitchen, the coffee machine wheezed to life. The same brand, same blend, same mug. She drank it standing by the window. Her apartment faced a construction site. Every morning, she watched men in neon vests move concrete blocks with their bare hands. She envied them. Their work looked backbreaking, but at least it was something. At 7:10 a.m., she opened her laptop. The inbox was a graveyard of, "Unfortunately, we have decided." Emails. She clicked on new job listings. Scanned through titles. Dynamic. Self-starter. Fast-paced. They read like someone trying to sell oxygen in a burning room. She applied anyway. Resume. Cover letter. Click. No expectation. No emotion. Just a checkbox on a to-do list that didn't matter. Twice a week, she called her mother. The screen would fill with her mother's round face, slightly distorted by the bad camera angle. The conversations were short. Always the same questions. Are you eating? Are you sleeping on time? Rhea would nod, smile, say yes. She never mentioned the panic attacks. The one that had sent her to the bathroom floor last Thursday. Gasping, fingers curled against the tiles like claws. She never mentioned that she'd eaten cereal for dinner 6 nights in a row, or that she hadn't cried. Not because she was strong, but because she was numb. At 5 p.m. she ran. The complex courtyard looped in a near-perfect oval. She ran in circles like a hamster, tracking steps on her smartwatch. She never looked up, never made eye contact with the other runners. They were all pretending to. Her chest tightened on the 6th lap. Her knees ached. She kept going. The pain was proof she still existed. At night she scrolled endlessly. Instagram, news, LinkedIn, repeat. Everyone seemed to be thriving. Starting new ventures. Growing herbs on balconies. Hosting webinars. Winning awards. She posted nothing. Not even stories. Instead, she stared at the ceiling until her brain blurred into static. At midnight, she closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. The alarm was set for 6 a.m. The only thing she was sure of. The studio smelled like dust and turpentine. It had been closed for over a month, left in the dark like a forgotten memory. Ankit paused before stepping in. His hand lingering on the doorknob. He wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe cobwebs, maybe ghosts. But it was just the same space. White walls stained with failed experiments, canvases leaning in the corners like witnesses too tired to testify. Sunlight filtered through the high window and settled on a canvas half covered with a chaotic smear of color. It had been the last piece he touched, unfinished like most things lately. He didn't pick up the brush that first day. Instead, he moved slowly through the room, touching things without purpose. A half-used palette knife, a broken pencil stub, a jar of water so murky it looked like grief. The silence was different here. Not empty but watchful. It was the kind of silence that echoed, not with sound, but memory. Gallery openings, polite applause, phone calls from collectors who now no longer responded. He had measured success in square footage and price tags. Now the tape measure was gone. The second day, he came back with no intention but couldn't leave. He sat in the center of the room, staring at his own work like a stranger. A blank canvas mocked him from the easel. His hand hovered over the brushes but refused to choose. Instead, he grabbed charcoal, raw, unforgiving, and made a single violent stroke across the canvas. Just one. It was crooked, aggressive, honest. He kept going. Lines, scratches, smudges, no plan, no form, just motion. His fingers became black with dust. By the end of the hour, the canvas looked like a battlefield. It wasn't beautiful, but it was alive. On the fourth day, he brought a stool. He painted sitting down, something he never did before. It made him feel grounded, less like a performer and more like a man building something broken. He stopped using brushes and started using his hands. The wall began to fill up, not with masterpieces, but with fragments of feeling. Half-formed faces, messy skies, empty chairs. There was a rhythm to it now. His art was no longer trying to impress. It was trying to speak. One painting had a solitary light bulb hanging from a string. No switch, just light and shadow. He stared at that one the longest. By the end of the week, the studio looked like a confession. And for the first time in months, Ankit didn't feel like a failure. He didn't post anything online. No time-lapse videos. No hashtags. The silence no longer demanded performance. It was his again, a collaborator, not an enemy. Outside, the city had started to hum again. But in here, something more sacred was returning. The will to begin. Ravi's day began before dawn. His phone alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., vibrating on a metal surface beside his mattress on the floor. The single-room apartment he rented had no kitchen, no table, no decorations, just function. He rose without stretching. There was no time for luxury. He washed his face under cold water, wrapped his delivery jacket over yesterday's t-shirt, and checked his bag. Fully charged phone. Sanitizer bottle. Bear mask. Outside, the city was still half asleep, soaked in the blue-gray quiet of early morning. But Ravi was already pedaling through narrow lanes, avoiding potholes, dogs, and early sweepers flicking dust into the air. His body moved on habit. His mind floated somewhere behind him. His first stop was a tower in a gated community. He wasn't allowed past the main gate. A guard took the package and waved him off like a mosquito. No eye contact. No words. Ravi had stopped expecting either. He moved fast. Time was money, and money was never enough. By 10 a.m., his shirt was soaked through. He ate a banana while waiting for a restaurant order, watching a vendor across the street fry samosas. The smell made him dizzy. He hadn't had a real meal in 2 days. Some deliveries were easy. Prepaid, no contact, just leave at the door. Others weren't. A man yelled at him for being late, even though Ravi had arrived 10 minutes early. Another handed over cash with 2 fingers like it was contaminated. A woman sprayed sanitizer on the bag while he held it. He never argued. He didn't have the time. Or the luxury. But then there were moments. Small ones. Unusual ones. That afternoon, he rang the bell of a 4th-floor apartment. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A child, maybe 5, maybe 6, stood behind the glass of the front door. Thin arms, white eyes, no smile, no fear. Just a stillness Ravi hadn't seen in weeks. The boy raised his hand and waved. Ravi froze, startled by the gesture. It was so simple, so undeserved, so human. He raised his hand in return slowly. They stood like that for a few seconds, 2 strangers separated by glass and circumstance, sharing a silent exchange more honest than anything he'd heard all week. When the door opened behind the boy and an adult pulled him away, Ravi turned and left without waiting for thanks. But something had shifted. Not the world. Not the job. Just the day. At night, Ravi collapsed onto his mattress. His body throbbed. His feet ached. But he closed his eyes with that image still alive. A small hand against glass. He didn't know the boy's name. Didn't need to. It was enough to remember he had been seen. Neha had always written for others. Content calendars, PR releases, thought leadership pieces for people who didn't know how to think, much less lead. Before everything stopped, her days had been full of deadlines and drafts that never carried her name. Now the emails had dried up. Her clients disappeared quietly, like a tide that recedes and never returns. The quiet wasn't immediate. It crept in. Slowly, cruelly. At first, she did what she was supposed to. Updated her resume. Read articles titled, "Reinvent Yourself Post-Crisis." She tried. Failed. Tried again. And then she stopped. One night, around 2 a.m., after hours of blank staring at her laptop, she opened a new document. No formatting. No title. Just a blinking cursor and too much inside her chest. She typed. Nobody tells you that grief doesn't just hurt. It confuses you. You forget how to stand inside your own life. It wasn't for anyone. It was just to get it out. The next morning, on a whim, she posted that sentence on her old blog. No hashtags. No image. No context. She closed the tab and forgot about it. But people found it. Quietly, like stepping into a room they didn't know they needed. Comments trickled in. Not likes. Not the hollow dopamine of social media metrics. Comments. Real ones. From strangers who said, "Same. I thought I was the only one. Please write more." So the next day she posted again. Just one paragraph. No more. She set a rule. No editing, no overthinking. Had to be honest. Messy was allowed. Each post became a piece of stitching. Not a patch for a wound, but a thread through a torn world. She didn't try to inspire. She just told the truth. About walking past a mirror and not recognizing yourself. About missing someone who wasn't dead, just distant. About pretending you were fine because breaking down felt like a luxury for people with softer lives. Then something happened she didn't expect. People began to write back. Not just comments but their own paragraphs. Snippets of pain. Fragments of survival. One woman wrote,
"I saved your post and read it every morning before I start my shift."
A man said,
"I haven't spoken to my brother in months, but your words made me text him."
Neha realized she was no longer writing for herself. She was holding space for others. She wasn't performing. She was connecting. She created a new page on the blog, called it The Thread. Every week she added a new post. Each entry began the same way.
"This is not advice. This is just what I know right now."
She never advertised it. No SEO tricks. No newsletter campaigns. It spread anyway. Shared in group chats, quiet circles, forwarded like whispered notes. Her world hadn't expanded. Not yet. But it had shifted. She had a purpose, not grand, not loud, but clear. And when she looked back at her old self, the one chasing clients, word counts, relevance, she felt a kind of sorrow. Not regret. Just awareness of how easy it was to forget that survival isn't just about income. It's about meaning. One morning, weeks later, she opened her email and found a message from someone named Ria. Short note.
"I used to be good at pretending. Your writing helped me stop."
She sat with it for a long time, just breathing. And in that stillness she understood. The silence hadn't been emptiness. It had been waiting. For the words. For the return. For the after.